We are reading from the Yogasutras, and this is our online class number 21. We are in the second chapter, and we will be taking up the study of the aphorism number 7 onwards. Last time we discussed the idea of avidya, the power of ignorance, that is indicated as the power or shakti in the aphorism avidya. Avidya asmita raga dvesha abhinivesha pancha klesha. That was the aphorism. This is the power or shakti because avidya or the shakti of yoga philosophy, or as you know it is called prakriti, is the fertile ground for the other pain-bearing kleshas, pain-bearing obstructions. This we have read in the earlier aphorism. So let me read the 7th aphorism. Avidya asmita we have already seen. Now raga. Avidya means ignorance and asmita is ego. These two we have already seen, and now we are going to the third one, raga. Raga, sukhanushayi raga. Patanjali says, the Yogasutras writes that attachment is what drags us to the enjoyment of pleasure. That is what is called attachment, a force of ignorance, but it is manifesting in this way, that it drags us to the enjoyment of pleasure. Psychologically speaking, material pleasures create the impressions or samskaras of attachment. Initially, it does not look harmful. We do not guess that it could become so powerful gradually. But slowly, we grow the attachment to unreal things to an extent that can be called addiction. And the truth is that any attachment to unreal and hence changeful things do not give us stability. They cannot give us peace of mind for a long time because these things are changeful. What is the process of growing attachment? There is a very simple example. Suppose for this purpose we use this illustration that someone likes a beautiful face. Suppose I like a beautiful face and my eyes are there to look at things. It is a normal act assigned to the sense instrument called the eyes. Hence, if I look at your beautiful face, it is no harm for me, and it is also not the fault of the eyes. They are mere mechanical instruments. They are functioning perfectly in a mechanical way. But suppose I look at the same face a second time, that shows I have given my attention. When I look at the same face for the third time, it shows that there is an intention. If I look at it for the fourth time, it is attachment. And if I cannot live without looking at the same face again and again, it is called a strong attachment. It can be taking us to the point of having an addiction. So in the second chapter of the Gita, Sri Krishna, while narrating the traits of a person of steady wisdom, analytically and also very meticulously outlines the process of forming an addiction that finally leads us to our ruin, to our destruction. There are wonderful two verses. Sri Krishna says, in a person who dwells longingly on the sense objects, means who meditates on sense objects. So an inclination or a sangha, an attachment towards those sense objects is generated. So when we meditate on or think, contemplate on any sense object, material object, then an attachment to that object is slowly generated. This attachment develops into desire to get that thing as an object of enjoyment, to fulfill our pleasure. And that desire for pleasure begets anger. If I am not able to get that pleasure and something comes in between obstructing my way, then I get angry. Then Sri Krishna says this anger generates delusion. When we are angry, we don't have control over our mind to decide things sensibly or normally. And the delusion results in loss of memory. When we lose our sense of judgment, then our memory does not help us. Memory of what we have learned throughout, memory of what we have studied, memory of what experiences we have about things, these are all lost. And the loss of memory brings about destruction of our intelligence or intellect, discerning intellect. Buddhinashaha, Sri Krishna says. And when this intellect is lost, then there is no way that we can save ourselves from a disaster. So therefore Sri Krishna says, Buddhinasat pranasyati. So the person meets the destruction. This is a refreshingly significant message. And in this message, Sri Krishna implies through these two verses another message that is a counter process that is implied here. He tried to hint at that, and that is very vital for growing our attachment in a different direction. Let us read the above two verses instead in the following manner. I have merely replaced the word Ishwaram for the object of meditation, which was Vishayam. So when you change the object of meditation, instead of having any material sense object as your object of meditation, and then finally that would lead us to our destruction. Instead of that, if we choose God or something which has a universal connotation as the object of our meditation, then there happens a sea change in the whole process itself. The process is the same, the steps are the same, but instead of producing the obstacles or harmful effects at every level, this meditation on God or any universal object will become a help at every step to take us to our liberation. We need to just change the object of meditation from matter to God or to ourself to anything what has a divine connotation. That is what I have done in these two Gita verses to find that meaning, to discover that meaning. Now let us note the amazing effect of this small change. Just one change you make and other things just go on changing according to the first one. It will produce transformation in the consecutive objects and will finally lead us not to our destruction but to our final liberation, ultimate liberation. So here, if we look at this verse from a different standpoint, putting God in place of Vishaya or the material object, the meaning comes like this. Let me just read the Sanskrit version of it, and then I will translate it. The Sanskrit version of the original 2 Gita verses are there in the Gita, but the change what I have done, that looks like this. Dhyayata Ishwaram Pungsa. It was Dhyayato Vishayan Pungsa. See, Dhyayata is same, Pungsa is same. Instead of Vishayan, I put Ishwaram. Vishaya means the sense object, a material object, and Ishwaram means God. So now this reads like this: Dhyayata Ishwaram Pungsa Sangastasmin Upajayate Sangat Sanjayate Prema Premna Karuna Upajayate Karunaya Bhavati Nirmoha Nirmohat Smritiragamaha Smriti Vridhya Buddhi Shuddhi Dhi Shuddhya Sa Vimuchyate. Vinashyati was the last word, which means destroyed. A person is destroyed. And here Vimuchyate means is liberated, finds the ultimate liberation. So the meaning is, in a person who dwells or meditates longingly on God, and attachment, Sangha, also will be created towards God. See, attachment to God is not an attachment that will lead us to our destruction, that would produce the krodha, anger, etc. Now, so we are dwelling on the thought of God, contemplating on God. Then what will happen? We grow attachment to God instead of a material object. And this attachment will develop into divine love, prema. The earlier original verse says kama. Kama means material desire, lustful desire. Here it is called prema, universal love. So divine love. And this divine love will beget compassion, karuna. From the prema, karuna will be born. And there from kama, krodha would be born. Krodha means anger. So here the divine love will generate compassion, compassion for all. And this compassion brings about loss of delusion. There it gave rise to delusion, krodha, anger. Here compassion gave rise to loss of delusion. That delusion will be destroyed. And the loss of delusion will result in the increase of memory. And there the memory was failing us, and here our memory is augmented, and we are supported by the promptings of the memory when we are facing the situations. Our memory about what we have learned from our elders, what we have learned from the tradition, what we have learned from the scriptures, from the teachers, all these things will be intact and they will come forward to help us. And this augmentation of memory brings about purification of discerning intelligence. So when the memory is very strong, then our buddhi will be more and more purified. Buddhi shuddhi. There it was buddhi nashaha, the destruction of buddhi, and here buddhi shuddhi. The intelligence or intellect will be purified. And the purification of the discerning intelligence will lead us to liberation, final liberation, vimuchyate. So earlier it created a destruction because the beginning was wrong. We began our meditation with a material object that slowly developed through different levels through the process and brought us to our destruction. And here we started meditating on God, contemplating on godly thoughts, contemplating on ourself or anything which has got universal connotation. And that was the initial change, and that went on changing the whole process in a different direction towards God, towards our final liberation. This is the process. What a message of hope and inspiration. This shows how a good habit is formed following a perfectly tested and recommended route. This is a perfectly tested and recommended path. Now let us ask, why is an addiction formed? They are formed, as we have already seen, because of a mistake. Our wrong identification of the self with not self. That is what we called avidya. Avidya is the fertile ground for all the following four. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, vinivesha. Avidya means ignorance, asmita egoism, raga attachment, dvesha aversion, abhinivesha fear of death or clinging to life. So here the identification of the self with not self is what is called avidya. We are attached to a particular thing and therefore have recognized our attachments in the way that they accommodate that particular thing. Or maybe the whole process of our enjoyment has been reorganized to accommodate the thing that we have started loving and getting attached to. This is the simple process. When we start loving something, initially what happens? The whole situation has to reorganize itself. Situation about me, about my mental condition, even the physical situations where we live, we change our places because of that. Where we live, what we do physically, all these things will be harmoniously reorganized to help us to get attached to the newly found object of attraction. Clear? Whole thing will be reorganized. Otherwise, when you ask me to reorganize things about myself, a lifestyle change, to bring about a lifestyle change, it is so difficult. Even if at the cost of my own health, even if it helps us in maintaining our good health, I won't will or like to change. But when we are attracted to something, a newfound object of attraction, then you see that your mind reorganizes even physical things. You change your location, place of onung, your home, your job, everything. You just go on reorganizing things to accommodate that thing of attraction. That is how the attachment is grown. When we are attached to our physical body, mistaking it for the reality, physical attachments are formed. The physicality about everything is valued and appreciated. The mind has come down to the physical level. When we are attached to our mind, to our intellect, our psychological or intellectual attachments are formed. We are happy to read books, we are happy to think about ideas, we are happy to discuss intellectual things. So the mind has lifted itself to a higher level than the physical one. So it has been rightly said by Swami Vivekananda that the attachment to name and fame is the last hurdle of noble minds. Even if you have become noble, but still there are attachments to name and fame. They are not physical attachments, but they are psychological attachments. So therefore they say we are the makers of our own destiny. So raga or attachment is a painful vritti, because it attaches us to changeful material pleasure. So when the pleasure is fleeting, changing, vanishing in the next moment, then it leaves behind it the feeling of pain that we have lost it. Losing something creates pain. So these vrittis of attachment, called raga vrittis, are born of our earlier samskaras, or impression of experiencing pleasure. That memory creates 3 consecutive actions in the form of a process. At first, it creates the desire to enjoy any source of material pleasure. Then the thirst to get it, or the feeling, the absence of that pleasure is created. And finally, the greed to enjoy it is produced. The last one, the greed, is something which makes us forget what is right and what is wrong. Actually, raga has tremendous power to forcefully bring us to sense enjoyments. It does not give us time to analyze the whole situation. The mind flows helplessly, and the mind follows the track similarly helplessly. Sri Krishna calls it kama or desire. This attachment is called kama or desire. Swami Vivekananda says that we find pleasure in certain things and the mind likes it. So then the mind will flow as a current towards those things. And this following the pleasure center is what is called attachment. We are never attached where we do not find pleasure. We find pleasure in every queer things sometimes, every peculiar things. But the principle remains the same. Wherever we find pleasure, there we are attached. So this is raga. Raga means one of the kleshas, 5 kleshas, and we have divided these 5 kleshas, or the pain-bearing vrittis or obstacles, into 2 parts. The first one is avidya. It is the breeding ground for the next 4, for the 4 following. They are asmita, raga, dvesha, avinivesha. Egoism, attachment, aversion, and fear of death or clinging to life. So, this is the raga or attachment. Now, second vritti, another vritti which brings about pain for us and also is an obstacle in our spiritual life. That is why it is called klesha. Klesha means a pain-bearing vritti. So, Patanjali says, dukkhanushayi dvesha. Dvesha means aversion, is that which dwells on pain. This vritti is called painful vritti because it follows pain. Let me explain this as the great commentator Vyasa has hinted at it, that dvesha grows in 2 ways. You get attached in a hateful way. You get attached to something because you hate that thing constantly. So you are attached indirectly. That is number 1. That is one way you get attached to that thing. And the second way is that you get aversion because of this hateful attachment. So you get attached because you hate it, and you get aversion because of this attachment. So these 2 ways it works. It is working 2 ways. Both raga means attachment in a negative sense and dvesha, aversion, they work together in this emotion called hatred or aversion. Hence it makes the mind deeply aggressive. It is very aggressive, but you cannot find the manifestation of it. Hatred is so deep rooted. It can be lodged in the very interior part of chamber of our heart, mind, and it is there. You hate a person with all your heart and senses. You do not want to look at his or her face. At least attachment has only one problem to deal with, to solve. But aversion has both of them in a negative way. The small word dvesha or aversion, or sometimes it is called animosity, actually includes more such emotions which create pain. Some of them have been narrated by the commentators, so I will just cite a few. Number one, that the emotion like the desire to hit back. That is what is called aversion. This desire arises when there is an obstruction to our achieving something which is selfish. The desire to strike back. Number two, there is a kind of irritative or allergic regret. A regret is there inside us. We may call it a suppressed anger. We could not do something at that moment. Very irritative feeling or allergic regret. Then the third one is revengefulness. This can be done by words like using harsh words to hurt others, by deeds like hurting others physically or even killing, and mentally like thinking of something bad about others. That is one of the very, very serious concerns. That you start thinking bad, that something bad or something harmful, something dangerous should happen to the person you hate. And the fourth one is, yes, that is anger. Now you get a complete picture of the ingredients of one small word, dvesha, aversion or hatred. Well, as we have already known, avidya or delusion is the main cause of all these later 4 pain-giving vrittis. Aversion versus withdrawal, vairagya. Here dvesha, that it withdraws you from something you hate, and vairagya means renunciation or choosing, withdrawal. What is the difference between these two? We have to make a clear distinction between the two words, dvesha and vairagya or renunciation. Aversion and renunciation, aversion and withdrawal. Religious people practice passivity, withdrawal, renunciation, whatever may be the name, not out of ill feeling or hatred, but because of a better choice. We choose something which is better than what is expected by everyone. But unfortunately in our life such circumstances come in which we are not able to do anything about removing our hatred or aversion by quitting that place or by leaving the company of the people who we hate. Hence you have to live with your hatred. Hence we have to live with our hatred. That makes us almost numb, almost insensitive to everything about that person, that thing or that idea, whatever it may be. Actually, attachment or even addiction can be remedied by 2 practices, like practice of detachment and practice of love of God. But aversion or hatred is a kind of aggressive detachment already existing in our mind. Hence there is left only one option, one choice, to get rid of this painful vritti, klesha, which is called aversion. Only one option, and that is practicing love of God. Satsang may help. The holy company may help, because that is very practical to practice love of universal love, not expecting anything. There is no question of bargaining. There is no question of fear also when you are in a satsang. These are the three criteria that has to be fulfilled for divine love. But if you love God directly, then all these criteria are fulfilled all at once, and you are very safe there. So it is God's grace, it is only God's grace that can remove the deep-rooted scar of hatred from our mind. The hatred is, if you hate someone, if you have hatred in your mind, believe it or not, it is difficult to meditate. Mind is full of that negative energy, terribly negative energy. It makes you insensitive. Therefore, dvesha is a painful and silent suffering, and only our devotion or love for God can remedy it without bringing us into friction, without entangling us in this peculiarly complicated situation. But if we are dependent on God, He remedies it, whatever way it is suitable for you. In our own group living, we have seen that many a time, or sometimes it is too long a time really, that you have to numbly live with pathological liars, hypocrites, with fair faces and false hearts, sabotaging selfish motives that damage group interests, etc. But believe me, God does take care of the victims and does whatever He wants to do with the perpetrators, here and now. If we depend on God, He is the benevolent Creator. He not only protects you, protects the other side. Hence, love of God or bhakti yoga is the only way. That is the advice of Narada. Now we move to the fourth one of these kleshas. As I have said again and again, 5 kleshas are there. The first one is avidya, ignorance. That is actually the root cause of the next 4. And the 4 are the kleshas: asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So what is abhinivesha? Patanjali says, sarasavahi viduso api tatha arudha abhinivesha. The last of the 5 pain-bearing obstacles or vrittis is called abhinivesha. Swami Vivekananda has translated this word as clinging to life. Abhinivesha, abhi means towards, nivesha means engagement. Engagement towards life. This clinging to life is common to not only humans, but to all created beings also. It is only when you realize the Atman in you as the never-dying reality, then and then alone, you laugh at the foolish idea of eternal survival of the body-mind complex. What is clinging to life? It is our longing not to die. Well, let us ask the question, why is this fear of death? Why is this fear of death? Why do we love to cling to this life, even when the body and mind become unmaintainable? Patanjali says that it is born out of our own experience of death, which is, as a samskara or karma, ingrained or encoded in our genes. We had experience of death before. That is why we are afraid to die. Of course, there are a very countable few who would not have this fear of death at all from birth itself. And surely I do not want to guess it. as very true. But I would love to imagine that such are the cases of people who are in their first human birth, or at least have not had many experiences of the death of earlier physical bodies. Logically, genetically, and also philosophically speaking, we all cannot have such a common factor of fear of death unless we have experienced it before and have the code already ingrained in our very birth itself. This clinging to life or fear of death is an ingrained impression called vasana by the great commentator Vyasa. Vasana is a samskara. Samskara means impression. We have learnt that our attachment or raga is grown based on our attraction to happiness. We have also learned that our aversion or dvesa is grown because of our hating pain. But abhinivesha or clinging to life, that is fear of death, is there because of our failure to differentiate between what is ultimately good for us and what is ultimately painful for us. That is, this fear of death and clinging to life, this happens because of that. We have no long-term idea, long-term planning. On the other hand, our experience of leading a materially normal life also creates an impression, and it takes part in the evolution of an individual. We lead a material life again and again, and that creates a normal impression in our mind that life is like this, and that creates the codes in our individual's evolution. Hence we are born with such codes that it is normal to lead a life, mimicking the life the way the majority live. Mimicking the life the way the majority live. That is the normal encoded thing in each individual. This is also a kind of clinging to life. And what is this life? It is a so-called life, which ends in death. It also creates fear if we have to do something different than what is the so-called normal. That creates fear. And this fear is a pain, a suffering, a klesha. The most important reason behind abhinivesha or clinging to life is delusion or ignorance. That I will die. I will die. The delusion is that I think that I am the body-mind complex and nothing more than that. This fear is the root of all varieties of fear. This is the root. There is a story about Alexander, the Greek conqueror, who came to India. After his conquest of some princely states, he became tired and wanted to go back to Greece. He wished to take an Indian yogi with him as a sample. He found a yogi and asked him to accompany him to Greece. The yogi declined. Then the emperor became furious. He thundered, "Do you know to whom you are speaking? I am the emperor. If you do not agree, I will cut your head." The yogi laughed and laughed. He said, "My dear conqueror, you have said the most ridiculous lie in your life. You are talking about killing me? Fool, you may kill the body, but I am immortal. I am immortal. The real I, dear emperor, is beyond death. What fear do I have even before your foolish threat of killing me?" The fear of death itself is conquered when the truth is known. This is one of the points that prove the theory of karma and rebirths. It is a logical truth that every serious or repeated experience will create an impression or code on the hard drive on the mind called chitta. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, that is what we have learned in the very second aphorism of this book. So chitta means that is the mind stuff. So when we recall our impression or code, or when it pops up on the surface of the mind, it is called smriti or memory. It is there, but we have to recall it. Then it is called a memory. And if we cannot recall, then it is lost from memory. It is natural for all animals that after their birth they are afraid of death. But curiously, they have not yet experienced this death in this life. They are just born. Hence, this experience must have happened in earlier birth or births. This way we can deduce that abhinivesa or clinging to life or fear of death is one of the proofs of rebirth. Both the longings, one is the longing to cling to life, another the fear of death, are proofs of earlier experiences of rebirths and redeaths. Another almost similar proof is that a just born baby laughs and weeps in its sleep. The story material of the baby's sleep is carried forward from the earlier life or lives. That is why they are able to replay those things even when they are just born. Have no experience of this material world, of this world now, and so on. There was a rebuttal or doubt about this argument. The doubt is that the smriti or memory of the fear of death is natural to animal body. If we take this argument seriously, then we have to start believing in the absurd theory that all the memories have no cause. That is psychologically a wrong proposition. Well, it is believed by some scholars that only humans have future life. Like that after your death here, you may be reborn in the hell, in the heaven, or in human world. But there is no future life for animals. They say, if you think future life is the life of a physical body, then it is very true that all insects, worms, animals have a future body until they are liberated. Look at the rebirth of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly in front of our very eyes. Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda used the common example of a hen incubating the eggs of both hen and duck. In today's world, you may see videos of such episodes on YouTube. I have seen 2 of them. Very interesting. A hen is given both the eggs of duck and hen. She incubates them and both the chicken and duck chicks are hatched. Now the hen mom has no idea why the feet of the chicks are different. There are so many chicks are there, but some have got different type of feet, different type of beaks. One day she saw the duck chicks went down into water. And if you see that video, you will be simply amused to see that the hen was so surprised. And whereas the hen chicks avoided water, the mother hen was so appalled that she stood there in amazement and warning these ducklings, come out of water, you will catch cold, something like that. She was telling them. And such other peculiar habits of the duck chicks were displayed. And then the mother hen finally gives up because she cannot control them. These things have come from the earlier birth, the habits. On the other hand, if by future life you accept the life of the soul being reborn many times as long as it is not liberated, then also the same rationality of the rebirths, redeaths of souls applies equally, and their samskaras are there. And nowadays you see so many babies or children display their knowledge of high-class human arts that would take one years together to first learn and then develop to that level. They are born with the knowledge of a Beethoven's music or different such arts, even science also. That is why the Yogasutras is concerned about the painful obstruction called abhinivesha, or clinging to life, to the body-mind, which are wrongly thought as the life of the soul. This is painful because this will not allow you to end the suffering of the physical life. That is why it is suffering. It is painful. Well, what is or what are the ways to get out of these painful obstructions? The next sutra starts to deal with this question. What are the ways? Te prasava heyaha suksmaha. When these kleshas or the painful obstructions or vrittis are resolved to their causal states, then they are conquered. The painful vrittis of ego, attachment, etc. have a specific way or line of growth. If we want to get rid of them, then we have to turn the face of the arrow of growth to the opposite direction from where it came. The word prasava means that we have to turn their face to their source, prasava or origin. How that is to be done? The practice has a definitive process to be followed. We will discuss it in detail in the next aphorism. Number 1, the klesha or painful obstruction called asmita, ego, can be removed by the realization of the self, which is free from all suffering. Our knowledge of our own self comes from roasting the seeds of all kleshas. They will never germinate or give rise to more kleshas, more sufferings. Please note the very psychological position of this process. The scorching heat of the knowledge of the self, or what is permanent and what is impermanent, that roasts the seeds. Burning or roasting does not mean that they are all lost completely. They are there in their roasted forms. They can be recognized in their earlier features. They can be identified like the names and forms, etc. But their utility is destroyed, is burnt. Utility, they are there, the name and form both are there, but they cannot be used further. Hence, they cannot be used as normal seeds. Like suppose anger. The trace of anger will be there in us, but the effect to scorch us or others will not be there. Like for example, one can be angry without ill feeling, ill motive, and without hurting or harming others. Then you know that that person has controlled anger. Asmita or ego will be there in the realized souls also. But because of the ever-presence of the knowledge of the self, the ego cannot be a cause of our concern, cannot create suffering, cannot create pain. Then the second thing is that the practice of dispassion or renunciation, or we call it detachment, helps us to burn the seeds of attachment. So, dispassion means what? Detachment. And similarly, from the practice of love, the painful obstruction called aversion or hatred can be conquered. And our fear of death or clinging to life will be conquered by practicing differentiation between the unreal body-mind complex and the real self. These are the ways how to conquer these pains. One very important psychological point has been hinted at here by Patanjali. He indicated that in normal condition of an individual, the vrittis, or more specifically the klesha vrittis, the painful vrittis, determine or will determine our jati ayu bhoga, will determine what? We will see those things in the next aphorism, but in short, the klesha vrittis determine our jati, means in which species we will be born or reborn. Ayuhu means how long, till what age we will continue to live. And bhogaha, what will be the experiences of happiness and misery. Hence one should be very careful about these kleshas. Kriya Yoga helps us to reduce the kleshas to their causal states. Kriya Yoga will help us to reduce the kleshas to their causal states. What is Kriya Yoga? We started this chapter with this word Kriya Yoga. Please remember, this word Kriya Yoga is the original Kriya Yoga as we find in the Yogasutras. It should not be mixed up with the Kriya Yoga of the Self-Realization Fellowship group of Paramahamsa Yogananda. Patanjali says, Tapaha Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanani are together called Kriya Yoga. Tapaha means austerities or practice. Swadhyaya means study of the scriptures and following the guidelines. Ishvara Pranidhanani, and also remembering God in all actions. These three together are called Kriya Yoga. Swami Vivekananda says that when the chitta, which is, chitta means this, our mind stuff, which is an effect of avidya, is resolved into its cause, the egoism, then only the fine impressions die along with it. Meditation cannot destroy these impressions. We will come to that later. That means meditation can make these kleshas weaker and weaker until they are in their causal state. They will not be immediately recognized, but they will be there. And that is the source of all kleshas. That is what is called avidya. And then Patanjali introduces the last one, dhyana heyaha tadvrittayaha. These klesha vrittis, those weakened and subtle vrittis of the kleshas, have to be given up. Heya means to be given up by meditation, not destroyed. That is why Swami Vivekananda said that meditation cannot destroy them, but can reduce them to the smallest or to the causal state. And by meditation they will be given up, as if they are given up, they are no more there, but they are still there. They have to be destroyed. And that happens with the realization of the self. Everything is completely destroyed. There is a definitive way of eliminating the kleshas, the painful obstruction. We generally do not follow the preparatory path. Generally we don't like. Hence we come to complain that this is not working, that is not working. Most of the time the initial preparatory acts are so simplistic that we do not give importance to them. There is a story in Indian lore. Once an angry king was upset with his senior minister. He sent him to a prison which was made on a steep hilltop. There were guards everywhere, excepting on the vertical hillside. The minister's daughter hit upon a plan to get her father rescued. She collected a length of very thin thread of nylon, another length of a thicker thread, then a rope, then a stronger rope, like that. Now she caught a beetle, an insect that would like to live in cow manure. She tied the thinnest string of the thread to the leg of that beetle, put some cow dung to its face, and set it for a journey upwards to the prison on the hill. When the beetle reached her father, The minister caught hold of the thread, then the girl tied the rope to it, and so on, the strongest rope finally. Then the minister escaped, climbing down the hill with the help of that strongest rope. So the process of eliminating the kleshas or the painful vrittis which create the pains in our mind and that bind us is like that. The process begins with very easy steps, almost invisible, simple, thin thread, and intensifies slowly through practice. This is being explained in this aphorism. We have to begin with the beginning if we want to be the beginners. So I think I will stop here today because it will take some more time, because it is a very important aphorism which will help us to get rid of many mental sufferings which are caused by these kleshas, klesha vrittis. Kleshas means they are klesha vrittis. They are vrittis, the smallest form of our thought, the smallest unit of our thought. So that has a wonderful, well chalked out path and also very graphic description about all these shapes, sizes and utility of all these vrittis. So I will take it up in our next class. So I stop here today, and we will close with chanting of Om once. Om